We'll know better, in a few months where we're going to be and what we might need to do with that. I have no way of predicting how regular or frequent these payments are going to come in. I do know the schedule. It's $1,000 for the first 10 occupancy permits. That's the key. They have to get an occupancy permit for a unit in Timber Trails. It's $2,000 for each of the next 30, $3,000 for the 30 after that, and $5,000 for however many after that it would take to hit 200 grand. It's 12, 16, something like that. There's about 230 some units, if I recollect, that they can sell there, houses and townhouses, and we really only need to get to about 72 or 78 units sold and occupancy permits issued, and we will have our 200,000. So once they sell and build one third of their proposal, we'll have our money. With that, then I would like to.
I agree with what Norm said. The way I see it, it's going to come in smaller chunks unless they get generous. But I believe they're going to do it per house, right? So that's per unit. I would like to see it put for something impacted by Timber Trails. I don't know what that is today, so I would say we put it into a fund and talk about it over the next year or two, and maybe it'll be 15,000 or 2,000 next year or 20,000. But I don't see it being a huge influx of cash to be able to do much with for a while. That's my projection.
Well, I would like to go further and refine, as I had said last time, that I would like to see the money earmarked to be used for street maintenance. What's impact may favor a small area of the town. I would like to spread the impact fees to the village, and that's the terminology it's used for. To me, it's a source of revenue to help offset the money we're going to need for not only streets but all the infrastructure. But at a minimum, can we agree to set up a separate account, a separate
I've already spoke with the bank.
fund, and as they come in,
we deposit in an interest-bearing account, and until the board directs me what to do with them, they'll sit.
Maybe a good thing for the finance committee to mull over.
the one we're working on.
The potential.
Mr. Mayor, the only modification I would recommend is rather than limit it to streets, maybe just limit to infrastructure. That gives us a little more flexibility. I realize this is an advisory opinion, so it doesn't really sound like it, but if we make it an infrastructure account, maybe that's a little more numbers.
I appreciate that. I personally have a preference for a street maintenance program. Trustees, I would like to earmark for that. I said that last time, and I want to stay with that. We do need to fix the streets. So
I like infrastructure.
Yeah, my concern is if we're not going to use it to patch the streets, $200,000 is not going to do a whole lot to repair or pave the streets. So I'd rather put it for infrastructure than say it's just for streets, because if our intent is to use it to repave all the streets in the town, $200,000 is not going to get us very well.
I looked at it potentially as if we were to borrow $1 million and go and do bigger streets, and then we accumulated this $200,000, and we were at a point where, and Dave left already now, where we were in a situation where we could pay off some loan or debt instrument in advance with that $200,000 because we had it. To me, that would be using it towards street maintenance, and that would open up our credit for future endeavors with the streets. But unless it changes your minds, I see I'm outnumbered here. So the chair would entertain a motion to direct our finance team to create a separate account for the Timber Trails impact fees with the intent of the board to use that for infrastructure repairs as the board determines in the future.
So moved.
Tom?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, continue to chairs, the ayes have it. That motion carries. Now we'll have questions or comments from the audience, and since this was discussion, I saved it to now, but if you would care to ask a question or a comment on any of these matters that we discussed tonight, you could do so, or new matters. And before I forget again, I wanted to mention after the consent agenda, Chairman Schermerhorn, welcome back. Appreciate your willingness and your willingness to step back in there. And I would like to take you up on your suggestion as trustee Schermerhorn to work on updating our zoning ordinance in light of its coming next year 50th anniversary of 64. So that would be the only charge I give you is on that. Thank you. Audience questions and or comments?
Mr. Mayor, may I make one comment?
Go ahead.
Along the same lines as Timber Trails, I've asked Frank to have someone from Timber Trails Development come in September and do a presentation to the board as well as from the residents as to what exactly they're doing over there. I mean, I know that 8 or 9 years ago there was an approved plan. I don't know whether or not that's still the exact plan or what the timeline is. And we see a lot of derping move and different things, and I've had a lot of residents have questions about that. So at the September board meeting, I'd like to have somebody from Timber Trails or Gardner, whoever is the developer, come and do a presentation for us, hopefully with some type of brochures or timeline, so we can keep up to date as to what's happening over there. And I believe Frank has reached out to somebody, or he's in the
Haven't
process.
talked to anybody yet.
He's working on it.
Okay.
So I would just ask that they put on the agenda for September, please.
If they can.
If they can, of course. Thank you.
Audience? In the back, Mrs. Metz.
Hi there. I had a question that I wanted to address with Frank, and maybe you'd prefer to talk about it at the next community awareness meeting that I think is coming up. But we've made the news for heroin overdoses lately, and I've been trying to track it back with the information that you put on the website, which I very much appreciate. And I saw that there was another article. I guess there's been 3 in the last 2 months. Is that
I
correct?
could talk about it a little bit now, but we will talk about it at 19th. I think it was stated, I think in the neighborhood watch, it's something like heroin in Indian Head Park, and I think that was all just a misinterpretation. What we have here is anywhere, there's people that are using heroin that live in the town or live anywhere. It didn't mean that heroin is being sold in the town.
No.
Okay, so I think that was a big misunderstanding. We're just having, I think if you remember, maybe a year or so ago back, Naperville had a number of deaths from heroin use. There's heroin mixtures out there that they use it, and it's whatever it's mixed with. Some people are dying. There was a number of people dying. We have some people here in town, young 20s at their age, which is a shame, but they're going out elsewhere. The last one from the interviews we talked with, they went out in Cicero, Chicago, and then they come home to their private homes, and they go in their basements as 23, 24-year-olds, and with a friend or 2 friends, and in this case that's what it was, and they're shooting up heroin, and then everybody goes to sleep, and the next morning they wake up and somebody's dead from the heroin. So it's not, we don't know what our neighbors are doing inside their houses, obviously. It's something, even aware, how could you be aware of somebody coming home with a pack of heroin in their pocket and then going in their homes to use it? But we certainly will address it a lot further on the 19th. But I think that answers probably something, the question or what's going on. I mean, and heroin is cheap today. I mean, it's just, it's crazy. And in this particular case, we had 3 or 4 people using it. One was pregnant, but they're 24 years old. They go out, they buy it for $10, they get a hit, they come home, they go home, they have a little party in their basement, everybody goes to sleep, and somebody has a reaction or has a bad batch. And we had 3 so far in town this year. But again, it doesn't mean, they weren't buying it in Indian Head Park. They went on the corner purchasing it, they went out, purchased it, came home.
Thank you.
Mr. Metz.
I think my question's for Frank too. You touched upon the street and sewer plan. How is that coming along?
September, I'm sure we will have to share with the trustees and possibly with the residents is the street plan that I showed to the trustees last month. We'll have that narrowed down, which a priority group of streets, which ones are within the next 2 years should be repaired, which ones can go for the next 5 to 6 years with just a good crack sealing maintenance. We should have that for September. and we should have information on our water main. What we're gonna look at is what I'm gonna show the trustees is a mapping, and then we'll share it. I'm sure we'll be able to share it to residents, put it out there on the website, of the water main bill put together for us from Public Works, where all the water main breaks have occurred. He updated the map for me for 2013, and then where we see on the map where most of the water main, what sections of the water main have the biggest breaks. Obviously, those would be the ones that I would recommend if we were gonna decide to repair or replace them, repair them, whatever. But I'll have figures there and how many feet of water main would probably need to be repaired sometime in the future. So we should have something for September. And we'll show a good picture, I think, of, again, there'll be an estimate, but that estimate will be higher because once the board gets this report and then decides, yeah, let's plan on doing something to fix A, B, C, and D, or whatever the case is be, then you got to involve the engineer and do a more complete study, and then, of course, the cost. My estimate that I'm going to show, the cost will go up because I may say, we may say it costs $55,000 to fix the street, but after the engineer goes out and does core sampling and stuff, I find out that it needs more than what we thought. Or maybe it won't, so it could go either way, but I would venture to guess it's going to be higher. So we are still gathering, putting it all together, so we should have it.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing.
Just one question.
Just
With the-
Mr. Metch will be next,
Oh,
Mr.
okay.
Meany in the back, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question. With the streets, are they also taking into consideration the amount of travel on a given street? I mean, because we have a lot of streets in town, some get a lot more use than others. And-
Yeah, and basically, we're really going to look at which ones are really in desperate need, that are really starting to crumble. That's going to be the first. And then we will take a look at, there may be one out there that, well, there is, that I'm going to recommend we will remove from the list of being fixed for a number of reasons. Number one, it doesn't get the traffic, even though it probably needs some good repair, but it's in an area of town that doesn't use it or something to that effect.
Mr. Nuts.
The Finance Committee, you're talking about the public participation, the resident participation. How will you choose those residents? Will you pick them by yourself? Will the board entertain volunteers and consider it from there, or what's the plan? Do you have people in mind already?
Well, I would solicit input from the residents, and in terms of formality, I don't think that it's appropriate to burden people and the whole board to sit while we interview X number of applicants, but perhaps maybe Frank and I, or Frank and Norm, or maybe Brenda and I will sit and talk through it and decide who's the best people, and then it's my role to make the recommendation for appointment, and the trustees to vote for or against that individual.
Yeah, like going to the zoning board, switching a little bit. How did it come about that Dennis would be the chairman? Was it input gotten from the board on that? I have no objections to him. I think he's a great candidate for the chairman. And I just wondered about the process.
There wasn't any process to speak of. It's just knowing Dennis has been in that position for X number of years, did the village and myself a favor to step up to fill a trustee's position. And as the election turned out, we have a gentleman with experience. It really didn't require a lot of thought to ask to put Dennis back, especially if you were at the meeting when Dennis brought up about the 2014 50th anniversary of 64-1.
I think it's a great idea. I think this needs to be
So,
done.
and he's the great person to do it. There's really no debate, or, nothing further required.
Yeah, I guess I have no objections to him. It's not about him at all, it's just the
But that's how it was. I asked him, and how it got to be that he would come back as chairman, because I hadn't thought about that, because I asked Noreen to do it, and she was. Noreen actually mentioned it to me, that if Dennis coming back, she would step down. It was her idea. And I talked to Dennis about it, and, nobody wants to step on anybody else's toes, but Dennis said, well, if she's okay with it, I'll be okay if we're okay. And I verified it, and we are here. Anything else? Dennis?
Since roads and streets were on the agenda of conversation, is there any way we could influence the county to take a look at Wolf Road? It's seriously, it needs a repair.
We're continuously doing that.
Yeah.
We talk to the representative in the district, you know, come on to patchwork or whatever. They don't tell us, you know, yes, no, or, you know, I'm sure it's financial, but we're always calling this.
Thought that would be the response.
And not to bash it, but.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Mr. Mayor, I will make the motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 subsection C1 to discuss the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees.
Motion by trustee Walsh, is there a second? Second by trustee Wittenberg. Roll call.
Trustee Walsh.
Yes.
Trustee Wittenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Schnaufer.
Yes.
Trustee O'Loughlin.
Yes.
Trustee Henshaw.
Yes.
Trustee Bailey.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we will take a 3-minute recess so we can close the room so we can enter into our executive session. Thank you. Have a